Hey guys, tonight we step through the crooked wooden door of a medieval tavern. The floor is uneven, the air is stale. Your boots stick slightly as you take that first cautious step inside. Dim candlelight flickers across sagging beams. Conversations blend into a low drone, gruff voices, tin cups, a dog barking in the corner. The smell hits next. Ale sweat, old grease, wet wool, and something else. Something animal. A thick fog of chimney smoke hangs in the rafters. The doorway behind you creaks shut. Someone near the hearth stares. You're not exactly welcome, but no one throws you out. That's a good sign. The tavern breathes around you. You realize this is where people eat, drink gamble, meet lovers, hear rumors, and sometimes die. All of it happens in this one dim space. You probably won't survive this night without at least one infection. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time. I love seeing where everyone listens from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck slightly as you step farther in. The wooden beam overhead is too low. Your shoulder brushes the rough whitewash of the wall. There's a dark, greasy stain next to the door frame height of a head. Possibly blood. Possibly gravy. You don't ask. The tavern's main room is square, maybe 20 feet across. The walls are thick stone whitewashed but smudged in places with soot or food. The ceiling sags with heavy blackened beams. A fire crackles in a stone hearth along the far wall. Near it stands a crude iron pot suspended by a hook. The smell coming from it is not entirely unpleasant, mostly onions. There are about a dozen people inside. 4 at a table playing dice, 3 hunched over tankards. 1 man asleep under a bench, face pressed into the straw. You hear a baby cry from upstairs, then a woman shouting in French, then a muffled thump. There's no music tonight, but someone is humming near the fire. The voice is low, male, off-key. You hesitate. Then you find a place along the back wall where there's a rough bench. It wobbles. You sit anyway. The straw on the floor is old. It smells like mildew. Bits of it cling to your cloak. Above the hearth, someone has nailed a dead animal's head to the wall. A boar, maybe. The eyes are long gone. The teeth are yellow and crooked. 1 ear is missing. There's no plaque. Just a head nailed to a wall. The tavern keeper emerges from a side door. He wears a dark wool tunic streaked with stains. His beard is thick and matted. His eyes move quickly watching. His shoes squelch when he walks. No apron. Just hands on hips and a loud voice. He shouts something to a man near the hearth, then spits onto the floor and steps behind the counter. You don't see a menu. There is no menu. You realize you're not in a place for choices. You're in a place for survival. A woman enters from the same door the tavern keeper used. She carries a jug and a wooden ladle. Her hair is covered by a linen coif. She doesn't smile. She walks to one of the dice tables and fills a cup. A coin changes hands. She leaves without speaking. You're still sitting. No one has approached you. There is no formal service. If you want food or drink or anything, you'll need to walk to the counter and ask for it. Assuming you speak the right dialect. Assuming they like your face. The walls near the fire are covered in black soot. Higher up, someone has scrawled something in charcoal. You can't read it. The letters are old, crooked. Maybe Latin. Maybe nonsense. It looks like a curse. There's a large dog lying near the fire. It is brown heavy and has one milky eye. It does not move when someone steps over it. You suspect it is alive, but barely. There are no collars, no names, just creatures sharing the warmth. You shift on the bench. Something pokes your back through the wood an iron nail. You move slightly to the left, still uncomfortable. At the table near you, a man is eating something from a bowl. You recognize the contents. Barley, leeks, bits of root vegetable. The broth is thin and gray. He eats with a spoon carved from wood. It is stained dark from years of use. He slurps, slowly pausing to wipe his mouth with the back of his sleeve. You hear someone coughing upstairs. Then silence. Then footsteps across creaking boards. Then a loud sneeze. The tavern has two visible doors, one at the front, one behind the counter. There might be stairs behind the back door. You can't see clearly. The tavern keeper stands in the way. There's a smell of cheese now. Sharp, sour, and almost sweet. Someone near the corner has unwrapped a cloth and is nibbling from a wedge. You hear a faint squelch as his teeth cut through the rind. He chews slowly. No one speaks to him. Your feet feel cold. The floor is stone under the straw. Moisture seeps up through it. You regret sitting. But there's no better option. The place is full. No one is smiling. In medieval England, taverns served as centers for trade gossip and rest. They were not owned by corporations. They were owned by families. Some had been passed down for generations. Others were new, unofficial, and illegal. Historians still argue whether most taverns operated with formal licensing or simply bribed local officials. The system varied from town to town. In some regions, all public drinking had to occur at a church-sanctioned alehouse. In others, any person with enough grain to brew could serve whoever they wanted for a price. A fringe detail in one surviving 14th-century ledger from York, an innkeeper, was fined not for dirty bedding or bad ale, but for hanging wet geese too close to the chimney soot. Fire safety was less important than food presentation. You hear a bell. Small, high-pitched, sharp. It rings once, then again, then silence. No one reacts. It must mean something, but not to you. The dog groans in its sleep. You look down. Your boots are crusted in dried mud. You smell like the road. Everyone here does. There is no luxury. There is no charm. There is just the flicker of firelight and the endless smell of warm ale. You're still not sure whether you're welcome, but no one has told you to leave. That's good enough. The tavern keeper hasn't said a word to you yet, but you feel his eyes flicker in your direction, not with suspicion, more like mild annoyance. You shift again on the hard bench. He finally speaks. Not to you, to someone behind him. A girl appears, probably his daughter. She's young, thin hair tucked beneath a dirty white headscarf. She carries a wooden tray. Empty. She glances at you, then looks away. No smile. Just duty. This is how the hierarchy works here. The tavern keeper runs everything. His wife handles the brewing and most of the money. The daughter serves when ordered. There may be a son possibly at the stables, or conscripted, or buried. You don't ask. You finally stand. The bench creaks in protest. You walk slowly to the counter boots, scraping across the rush-covered stone floor. A few patrons glance up, then return to their tankards. The counter is a rough slab of timber, uneven and scorched in one corner. Behind it, the tavern keeper leans forward. His shirt is open at the throat. His chest hair is matted with sweat. You catch the smell of onions, smoke, and something sour. You ask for ale. He grunts, dips a jug into a larger cask, pours the liquid into a dented pewter cup, slides it toward you. No pleasantries, no price mentioned. You place a coin on the counter. He eyes it, doesn't nod, just picks it up and pockets it. You ask about food. He shouts over his shoulder. You don't catch the words. The daughter reappears tray, now holding a chunk of bread and a bowl of soup. She places it near you. The bowl sloshes slightly. The bread is hard, the surface scratched by rats or rough hands. No butter. This is dinner. You nod. She turns and disappears. Back at your bench, you begin to eat, slowly. The soup is hot, mostly water, a few limp greens, a floating piece of gristle. The bread takes effort to tear. You chew it until your jaw aches. The tavern keeper speaks again, this time to someone entering. You look up. A man with a wide hat, thick boots, and a walking stick limps inside. His cloak is soaked. Rain has started. The tavern keeper offers no greeting. The man knows where to go. A dry spot near the fire. He sits with a grunt. His boots steam. This is not a friendly place, but it is predictable. People know their place. The tavern keeper, his wife, and the girl run the show. No arguments, no smiling, just order. In some regions, the term inn meant a formal lodging house with licenses and fixed prices. A tavern sold wine and was more upscale often in towns with a bishop or castle. But most people just said alehouse. Terms overlapped, definitions blurred. You're likely in a hybrid. It doesn't matter. The law varied. In 1363, King Edward III issued a statute requiring alehouses to display a sign outside. A long stick, a branch, or a painted board. Something to indicate the house sold drink. The sign wasn't for style, it allowed inspectors to monitor them. Historians still argue whether these regulations were enforced. Surviving court records show inconsistent punishment. One inn in Gloucestershire was fined for serving on church feast days. Another was ignored despite multiple brawls and thefts. Local power mattered more than royal law. You glance again at the tavern keeper. His eyes are on the fire. His fingers drum slowly on the counter. His nails are black. Not from ink, from sootwork and dirt. He has no ring. His wife, you assume, handles the money and most decisions. She appears now wide-shouldered, heavy apron sleeves rolled to her elbows. She carries a bucket. The smell tells you it contains ale dregs or kitchen slop. She moves past you without a glance. Her shoes squelch like his. She disappears behind the door again. A fringe detail, some surviving alehouses ran entirely by women known as alewives. In 14th century Norwich, women made up over 50% of listed drink sellers. They brewed in their kitchens, served neighbors, and paid small bribes to avoid inspections. But they were often scapegoated. Bad ale. Blame the woman. Brawls must be her fault. Scholars still debate whether this was misogyny or simple convenience. You sip your ale. It is cloudy, warm, slightly sour, but not unpleasant. It tastes like oats, maybe barley. No hops. Hops were rare here before the 1400s. They were considered foreign, even suspicious. A few towns outlawed hopped beer entirely, calling it un-English. That changed later. But for now, your ale is weak and local. Brewed maybe 2 days ago. Boiled just enough to kill the worst of the water. Enough to keep your stomach quiet. You look again toward the counter. The tavern keeper is slicing something with a long knife, maybe cheese, maybe root vegetable. His hand moves slowly. The blade is dull. He uses force. No one talks much, just low murmurs. Cups clink. The fire pops. Someone upstairs drops something. A creak. A shout, then silence. You hear the daughter again, her footsteps soft on the stone floor. She passes you carrying a cloth bundle, maybe linens, maybe food for someone in a room. She doesn't look at you. You notice the dog is now awake. It watches her, then lowers its head again. The hierarchy is clear. Patrons sit, drink, eat if they pay, speak if spoken to. The tavern keeper decides who gets what and when. His wife manages the storage, the brewing, the money. The daughter serves only when told, no words, just motion. Upstairs there may be others, lodgers, travelers, people who paid for a bed or a floor. You don't know. You chew the last of the bread, wash it down with ale. Your stomach feels warm, not full, but not empty. You realize something strange. No one here smiles, not even once. That might be the most medieval thing of all. You shift again on the rough bench, brushing away a handful of brittle straw from your lap. The tavern floor beneath you is packed dirt, uneven and slick in places where spilled ale has turned the rushes to mush. The smell rising from below is part earth, part rot, part something you hope is just damp dog. Your boots are already stained. Every few feet a fresh pile of rushes lies awkwardly tossed. An attempt at cleanliness, though it's only partial. The tavern hasn't been properly swept in weeks, maybe months. Old rushes weren't removed. They were layered, straw over reeds, reeds over spills, spills over crumbs. A record of every night's filth pressed and composted into the floor. You are walking on a smelly, crackling history of drinking, eating, and vomiting. Your bench is sticky underneath. Someone spilled beer long ago. The grain of the wood still holds it. When you shift, the seat clings faintly to your clothing. Near the hearth, the dog scratches itself slowly, absently. Each scratch sends up a puff of dust and fur. The fire crackles in response, shedding orange light on the wall. You can make out a dark soot outline where once, probably, someone leaned too long and caught their cloak on fire. Above your head, thick oak beams stretch from wall to wall. A few hang lower than they should. The ceiling sags slightly in the center. You suspect rain leaks through in storms. Someone tried to fix it with wattle and plaster. The patch is darker than the rest. A faint smell of mold lingers overhead. It's not strong, just enough to sting when you inhale too deeply. The sounds around you continue without pause. Cups set on tables. The dog sighing. Dice rolling across wood. And low voices. Always low. Always murmured. To your right, a man leans over a chipped table. He picks something from his beard, then flicks it onto the rushes. No one notices. No one cares. Taverns weren't clean. No one expected them to be. Medieval sanitation was local, improvised, and mostly invisible. The floor absorbed waste. Food dropped rats, came dogs cleaned, and no one swept. Historians still argue whether taverns used fresh straw daily or only during inspections. Some suggest monthly cleansings before saints' feast days. Others believe the rushes stayed until they rotted. A fringe record from a 1387 legal dispute in Kent references a fight over foul hay bedding, suggesting some taverns substituted straw with whatever was on hand, even moldy hay. The brawl started after one man accused another of bringing fleas from his manure-stained mat. You scratch your arm. Just once. Just lightly. You hope it's just your imagination. At the next table, a boy, maybe 12, sits silently. His eyes are hollow. He holds a crust of bread, gnawing the edge. No one speaks to him. He might be a servant, or a runaway, or just someone who showed up and stayed. The tavern keeper walks past him without glancing. No one asks questions. The hearth draws most of the crowd. Warmth, light, a place to dry wet cloaks and thaw frozen hands. You stay in the back near the darker corners. Your bench is colder, but less watched. A new smell drifts in from the kitchen. Boiled cabbage. Strong, slightly sulphurous. You hear someone cough, then laugh, then silence. The candle on your table flickers low. Its base is tallow animal fat. It hisses as it burns, occasionally emitting a sour puff. You try not to breathe too deeply when it does. The walls are a mix of whitewash and exposed timber. The paint is peeling in strips. In one spot, someone drew a crude shape, maybe a horse, maybe a demon. It's hard to tell. The lines are childlike but deep, scratched with a blade. This place has no art, no tapestries, no effort at comfort, just walls, benches, smoke, and grime. A man passes behind you carrying a bundle. You smell fish, strong, wet, pickled. He disappears behind the counter. The tavern keeper says nothing. Trade happens here without formality, no receipts, no scales, just smells and coins and nods. You look down at your boots again. One heel rests in something soft. You shift it away. You don't look to see what it was. A cat emerges from under the table beside you. Its coat is mangy, tail crooked, one eye closed. It sniffs your foot, then moves on. The boy offers it a crumb of bread. It takes it gently, then disappears again into the darkness. Cats are welcome here. They hunt rats. That's enough. In the far corner, someone sneezes, loudly, then coughs. The noise is wet, phlegmy. A few heads turn, then return to their cups. Illness is expected, not feared. No one wears masks, no one washes hands. If someone dies, they're carried out, then replaced. You press your hands together. You haven't touched your face in a while. That's good. The girl reappears briefly, carrying a stack of wooden bowls. They clatter as she sets them down. She glances up just once. You meet her eyes. Her expression does not change. She disappears again. The tavern keeper wipes his hands on his tunic, then scratches his cheek. He says nothing, just watches. You hear a knock, sharp, 3 times, on wood. The door opens slowly. Cold air floods in. A woman enters wrapped in a cloak. She carries a bundle on her back. Her shoes drip. The floor hisses where they meet. The tavern keeper says nothing, just gestures toward a stool. She walks past you silent. Her eyes scan the room. She sits. Another log drops in the fire. Sparks rise. The room glows slightly brighter, then dims again. You sip your ale. It's still warm, still sour, still better than water. The soup in your bowl has cooled. A thin skin has formed on the surface. You stare at it, spoon idle in your hand. You're not hungry anymore, but you know you should finish. Food isn't wasted here. People notice. Not finishing your meal makes you stand out, and you do not want to stand out. You dip the wooden spoon again. The broth is now lukewarm. The carrots, if that's what they are, have gone soft and stringy. You chew carefully, slowly, one bite at a time. Each swallow leaves an earthy aftertaste, faintly metallic. The flavor of boiled iron, possibly from the pot. There's no salt, not really, just an underlying bitterness, maybe leeks, maybe turnips. The bread you were given earlier is tough now. You break it with effort. You dip it into the broth to soften it. It works a little. You chew. No one eats fast here. They chew, then pause, then chew again. Eating is not pleasure. It's routine. Warmth. Fuel. Nothing more. You glance at the tables nearby. One man eats from a shallow wooden bowl that holds only barley gruel. Another gnaws at a leg of poultry, though judging by the size and shape it may be goose. A woman near the door unwraps a bundle from her satchel and produces her own meal, a slice of cold pork and a heel of rye bread. No one comments. Bringing your own food is allowed if you buy drink. Menus do not exist. The tavern serves what the tavern has. Usually boiled, occasionally roasted, mostly porridge, stew, bread, and onions. Sometimes dried fish or preserved sausage. You ask yourself what it took to prepare this meal. No kitchen range, no gas, no deep fryer, just a hearth, a pot, maybe an iron griddle, and hands that have cooked this exact dish every day for decades. The recipes don't change. The ingredients barely change. They only get substituted depending on season, region, and what didn't spoil. You notice a greenish patch on the bread. You scrape it away with your spoon. Mold. Common. Not always removed. People ate it anyway. In medieval England, most tavern fare depended on two things, grain and fat. Everything else, vegetables, meats, or spices, was seasonal or expensive. Food had to last. Porridge could stretch a meal. Fat made it feel filling. Historians still argue whether tavern food was healthier than that of wealthier households. Some suggest the lower classes' reliance on coarse bread and vegetable stew spared them the excesses of noble kitchens. Others point to malnutrition and seasonal starvation. A fringe recipe from a 15th century manuscript in Yorkshire lists ale soup as a meal, stale bread soaked in weak beer mixed with garlic and egg. No vegetables, no meat, just softened bread and warm liquid. You sip the last of your broth. You're not full, but the edge of hunger has dulled. That's enough. The tavern keeper walks past again. He carries a leg of mutton in one hand, cooked, dripping fat. He drops it in front of a man at the fire. The man does not thank him. He begins eating with both hands. You watch him tear at the meat. His teeth are yellow. His lips shine with grease. There are no forks. None. Only knives, spoons, and fingers. You glance around. One man uses a small personal knife, drawing it from a leather sheath at his belt. He slices a dried apple into thin wedges and eats them slowly. Another patron eats with his fingers alone, scooping stew from the bowl and licking his hand afterward. The use of personal knives was common. Everyone carried one. It was utensil, tool, and weapon. But not everyone used it to eat. Many simply used hands. You grip your spoon more tightly. It's not yours. It's the tavern's. Likely unwashed. There's no plate, just a bowl, made of wood ringed with wear. The inside is scratched from years of use. A groove runs around the edge where spoons have circled thousands of times. You finish your last mouthful. The taste lingers. Onion garlic fat. You set the bowl aside. No one collects it. It will sit until the girl returns. You sit back. Your hands rest on the table. Sticky again. You wipe them on your tunic. It doesn't help. From the kitchen, a shout, a thump, a hiss of steam. Then the smell of burning wood. Someone lifts the pot too fast. You hear the tavern keeper mutter. The hearth fire snaps again. The room is dim save for that fire and a few flickering candles. The shadows hide most things. That's probably the point. A man near you belches loudly. No one responds. Table manners are different here. No napkins, no rules about elbows or chewing sounds. Just basic expectations: don't steal food. Don't waste it. Don't insult the cook. Those who do usually leave quickly, or get forced to leave. You feel the edge of a splinter in the table. You pick at it with a fingernail. It comes loose. There's something calming about the repetition here. Eat, sip, scratch, sit. No one checks the time. No clocks hang on the wall. You measure the night by the candles burning down and the feel in your stomach. You wonder again what tomorrow's meal might be. Likely the same stew. Maybe less salt. Maybe more barley. But it will be warm, and it will be here. And so will you. The bowl is empty now. You slide it slightly to the center of the table and wipe your mouth with the sleeve of your tunic. You glance down at your hands. The edges of your fingernails are dark with grime. You didn't wash before eating. No one here does. You realize there was no offer of a napkin, not a scrap of cloth, not even a shared rag at the table. This is normal. You are expected to clean your hands on your own clothing or not at all. That's part of the culture. The tavern provides food, warmth, and drink. Manners are your responsibility. You think of the utensils again. You had a spoon, barely smooth, thick-handled, splinters along one edge. You consider whether the last person who used it had lice, or worse. No forks. Forks haven't arrived here yet. Not really. In the early Middle Ages, forks were viewed with suspicion, too delicate, too foreign, associated with Byzantium, or worse, Italians. Most people simply use their fingers. You remember the man near the fire tearing at the mutton with both hands, fat dripping onto his wrists. He didn't flinch. He licked it clean after. You now understand why many people wore outer garments with removable sleeves. To absorb grease, to sacrifice cloth instead of skin. You wonder if you'll need to do the same before morning. A man across the room slices something with a curved knife. The blade is sharp, worn. He uses it with practiced motions, cleaning it against the wooden table between each cut. It's his own knife. Every man here has one. Some small, others long, none shiny. In medieval England, the table knife was personal property. Travelers brought their own. The tavern provided nothing beyond bowl and spoon. If you had no knife, you tore bread with your teeth, or waited until someone shared. You hear the scraping of a bench. Two men rise and leave their bowls behind. No one rushes to collect them. They'll be reused later, maybe rinsed in the bucket outside, maybe not. You rest your hands on the table, then pull them away again. Sticky. Again. The tavern keeper moves behind the counter. He's cutting a wheel of cheese. The blade squeaks against the rind. He uses no gloves. His hands are thick-scarred. He slices a chunk, wraps it in waxed cloth, and sets it aside. Probably reserved. Food doesn't come with garnish. There is no sprig of parsley, no herbs. If you taste sage or thyme, it's because someone had too much and needed to use it before it spoiled. You sip the rest of your ale. The bottom is full of sediment. Barley husks yeast particles. You drink it anyway. It's better than the water. Water is dangerous. Always. It isn't boiled unless used for cooking. It might carry worms, bacteria, algae. Water from town wells is cloudy at best, filthy at worst. That's why ale is standard. Even the children drink it. Small beer brewed with less grain, less fermentation. Often less than 1% alcohol. It's warm, filling, and safe. Not enjoyable, just necessary. You think again of the alewives, those women who brewed beer at home and sold it to neighbors. Their names survive in fragments of legal records. fined for short measures, praised for strong flavor, accused of watering down the brew. Historians still argue whether alewives were viewed as respected tradeswomen or tolerated nuisances. Evidence exists for both. In London, one 14th century record lists 3 alewives fined for noise unclean barrels and stirring fights. In York, another was praised by a magistrate for providing drink to soldiers passing through. Context mattered. Reputation even more. A fringe detail: some alewives marked their houses with a broomstick hung over the door, not for sweeping, for visibility. Over time, the broom became a symbol. Some say this image contributed to the later depiction of witches. Women, brewing, brooms, suspicion. You glance again at the girl who brought your food. She stands now near the hearth-empty tray at her side. Her hair is mostly hidden beneath her cap, but a few loose strands fall along her neck. Her eyes are fixed on the fire. She doesn't move until the tavern keeper calls. One word. Low voice. She nods. Disappears into the kitchen. The benches creak again as someone shifts behind you. There's very little laughter. The occasional grunt. A muttered phrase. Dice rolling. But no joy. Just hunger, drink, and warmth. You hear someone sneeze, then cough. Wetly. They turn their face, wipe their mouth. No one reacts. You hear your stomach again, not hungry, just uneasy. You think of the soup, the bread, the strange smell on the spoon. You realize you haven't swallowed meat tonight. You're not alone. Most travelers rely on grains and pulses. Meat is occasional and expensive, even in taverns, especially in winter. In towns without access to fresh game, it's reserved for those with coin or favors. The mutton you saw earlier, likely yesterday's kill. Dried near the chimney, roasted until chewable. That's the standard. You scan the tables. A man eats something pale from a small dish. Could be beans, could be tripe. You decide not to ask. A woman near the door pours liquid from a flask into her cup. She drinks, coughs once, then closes her eyes. Her hands are cracked, nails dark, possibly ink, possibly blood. It's hard to tell in this light. You feel a breeze at your feet. Cold. The door must be cracked. The tavern keeper notices. He walks to the entrance and pushes it closed with one heavy shoulder. The latch clicks. The wind dies. The fire glows again. More people are moving toward it now. Your spoon sits idle beside your empty bowl. You decide not to use it again. You don't want to touch it. You wipe your fingers on your sleeve. Then again, not clean, but cleaner. That will have to do. You glance into your empty ale cup. A thin ring of foam clings to the bottom edge. The liquid is gone, but the warmth remains. Slight. Fading. You set the cup down gently on the table. The sound it makes is dull, absorbed by the softened wood beneath. You think about asking for another drink, but you hesitate, not because of the taste. The ale was tolerable, earthy, cloudy, faintly sour. It did its job. But your stomach has begun to protest. Not loudly, just enough to give pause. You remember now why ale is preferred. Water is not safe. In towns and villages across medieval England, water comes from shared wells, shallow streams, or rain caught in barrels. None of it is filtered. None of it is trusted. Raw water often carries disease, parasites. Worse. So they brew. Ale is boiled during brewing, killing most harmful microbes. The fermentation adds preservation, weak alcohol, low sugar, no carbonation, served warm. It won't make you sick most of the time. You stand slowly. Your knees ache slightly from the cold. The bench creaks as you step away. A few heads turn, then return to their cups. You walk toward the counter again. The tavern keeper glances up, his face unreadable. His hands rest on the wood. You raise your fingers slightly too. He nods. No words exchanged. He lifts the same jug and dips it into the small barrel behind him. He fills 2 pewter cups with the same dull brown liquid, slides them across the counter. One sloshes slightly. You place your coin beside it. He does not thank you. You do not thank him. You carry the drinks back to your table. The surface is still sticky. You wonder again how long it's been since it was cleaned. The ale is thick near the bottom, unfiltered. Natural sediment collects. Some drink it. Others leave it behind. You sip slowly. The flavor is familiar now. Less shocking. The alewife who brewed this batch probably lives close, maybe even in the tavern itself. Brewing is part of domestic life. It's done in small quantities. Barley, oats, yeast, water, a fire, a pot, a cloth. Brewing takes time, soaking the grain, boiling the mash, cooling the wort, letting it ferment in open tubs. Then served unbottled. No cork, no seal, no shelf life. It must be drunk within days. Each batch tastes different. The ale you sip now is bitter, more than before. Maybe different barley. Maybe left near smoke. The flavor clings to your tongue. In 13th century England, laws governed ale pricing. A size of ale regulations dictated how much ale could be charged per gallon depending on the grain price. Inspectors known as ale tasters visited taverns, sampled the drink, and fined violators. Historians still argue whether these ale tasters were legitimate regulators or simply corrupt locals collecting bribes. Surviving records show both. Some fined for sourness and foul taste, others pardoned with gifts of cheese or song. A fringe reference from Chester notes one ale taster who lost his position after vomiting in the street and blaming the beer. His defense. He had tasted too many samples. You sip again. Your ale stays down, barely. Near the hearth, a new arrival pulls back his hood. Rain streaks his shoulders. He clutches a mug of his own. Steam rises from it, possibly mulled, possibly fresh. He sips quickly, lips barely touching the rim. Warm drinks are rare luxuries. Most ale is cool or tepid. Only those seated near the hearth enjoy reheated cups. You consider moving closer, but the bench you left is still yours for now. If you give it up, someone else may take it. Possession here is a matter of seconds. You sit again. The air is slightly warmer now. More bodies in the room. The fire crackles. The dog groans in its sleep. You listen to the voices, low tones, soft laughter, dice clicking on wood. No shouting. Not yet. You raise your cup. Drink again. You begin to notice the patterns. Men sip, pause, speak. Women sip, glance, whisper. Children drink quietly. No one gulps. No one wastes. The ale dulls the senses. Just enough. A woman near you hums a tune. Wordless. Possibly a lullaby. Possibly a prayer. She drinks between verses. You remember that ale was often flavored with herbs, yarrow, rosemary, sage. Before hops arrived from the Low Countries, flavor came from the fields. Each batch was unique. Some had medicinal effects. Others caused sleep or visions. You wonder what's in this one. The tavern keeper says nothing. He leans against the counter, arms crossed, watching. The cup in your hand feels heavier now. You place it down, not empty, just done. You've had enough, for now. The cup rests on the table beside your hand. You don't lift it again. The warmth from the ale has settled into your chest. Not a sharp warmth. Just a dull glow, steady and slow. You listen to the room. Voices blend into each other. Phrases drift past names, places, curses, slurred laughter. It's impossible to tell who's saying what. The fire pops again. Embers shift. You let your eyes drift over the tables. You study the people. At the far side, under a crooked timber beam, sits a man in a red wool cloak. The edge is frayed. His hat is broad-brimmed, bent at one corner. He wears gloves with no fingers. His boots are polished, which is unusual. He leans forward, murmuring to someone across from him, a man with ink-stained hands and a scrip at his belt. They could be clerks, or messengers, or someone pretending to be both. Beside them, an older couple eats from the same bowl. The man dips the spoon, hands it to the woman. She eats, nods, and returns it. They speak only once about the bread. Closer to you, a man with a shaved head and no eyebrows drinks from a clay mug. His back is against the wall. His eyes scan the room constantly. His fingers tap the hilt of a short knife at his hip. You don't stare. You've learned better. Taverns draw all types. Laborers, pilgrims, traders, runaways, veterans, servants between posts, beggars, gamblers, bandits dressed as monks, monks dressed as beggars. Everyone needs a place to sit, to sleep, to disappear for a few hours. In medieval taverns, identity is fluid. You can be who you say you are, until someone asks too many questions. Historians still argue whether taverns functioned as true melting pots or simply mirrored the outside class structure. Some records suggest mixing peasants sharing benches with scribes. Others show strict divisions, each group keeping to its corner. A fringe anecdote from a London alehouse mentions a man who disguised himself as a friar to avoid paying for a meal. He was discovered when he refused to bless his food. You sip the last of your ale and set the cup aside. At the table near the fire, a man is carving something into the wood. His knife moves slowly, a name maybe, or a symbol. No one stops him. The table's already covered in scratches, a crude map, a heart, a few Latin letters, some English, some Welsh. The dog shifts in its sleep. Its legs twitch. You watch as the tavern keeper moves to a corner table. He speaks quietly to a man in a dark cloak. Money changes hands. Not coins, just a pouch. The man does not look up. He tucks the pouch into his boot. You realize that deals are made here. Quietly, regularly, with witnesses pretending not to see. At another table, a game of dice begins. 3 men lean forward, casting bone cubes onto the surface. No boards, just table hand luck. They mutter numbers. One slaps the wood in frustration. Another grins and scoops up the winnings, small copper coins, and a button. Gambling is common, officially frowned upon, but tolerated if quiet. You hear a clink. Someone uncorks a bottle, not ale, wine, likely imported, likely expensive. The smell drifts past, sharp and sour, possibly spoiled, possibly just strong. A woman in a green cloak uncovers a bundle. She sells what's inside small packets wrapped in linen. Herbs, maybe. Powdered root. Sleep aids. Charms. She speaks only when spoken to. Her voice is soft. Her hands are stained. A man buys 2 packets. She places them carefully in his hand. He nods once and walks away. The tavern doesn't ask questions. The girl reappears with a bucket. She gathers empty bowls, wipes one table with a cloth. The cloth is dark with old stains. She works quickly, head down. You watch the patrons. One man hums, a low song, unfamiliar, possibly Breton. Another leans back and scratches his beard. Something drops from it, lands on the floor, maybe a crumb, maybe not. You think again about who these people are. The man at the fire, broad shoulders, short beard, soldier maybe. His boots are worn but oiled. He carries no bag, just a belt pouch. His knife is polished. The woman near the stairs, narrow face, black shawl. She hasn't moved in an hour. Her eyes are open, watching. She hasn't eaten. Her cup remains full. At a smaller table, a boy no older than 10 rolls a carved stick between his palms. No adult sits near him. No one speaks to him. He watches the dice game with quiet intensity. You try not to imagine why he's alone. Taverns were shelters and traps. They offered food, heat, and shadows. But they also hid danger arguments, thieves, knives in the dark. You glance toward the hearth. The man carving into the table has stopped. He now holds the knife loosely, blade pointed down. His eyes are closed. You look away. A new smell enters the room. Sweat, wet wool, possibly horse. Someone just arrived. The door creaks, then shuts. Another figure enters, cloak drawn tight, hood low. No one speaks. The tavern keeper looks up, nods once. The figure walks to the far corner and sits. No words exchanged. You sip again, but the cup is dry. You do not ask for more. You sit quietly, watch, and blend in. The dice clatter again. You turn slightly, watching the game unfold from your bench without drawing attention. The 3 men at the table speak in short bursts. One gestures, palm up, demanding a re-roll. Another waves him off, counting the coins with his thumb. The 3rd man leans forward and blows on the dice before throwing. They bounce against the edge of the bowl someone left behind. One lands in a puddle of ale. The men lean in to examine the result. They argue, quietly, tense, but controlled. A few words in French, maybe Norman dialect. You catch the phrase, bad roll, followed by pay now. No one shouts. Not yet. Tavern games were expected, even encouraged. They passed time, built friendships, settled debts, started fights. You look around the room. In a darker corner near the stairs, 2 women whisper. One has her back to you. The other is older, wearing a faded blue shawl. She leans close, hand resting on a wrapped bundle. You hear fragments, find again twice last month, can't afford. You turn away. The tavern is full of voices, but none rise above the hum. Everyone keeps things just below notice. You notice the tavern keeper now standing near the window. He lifts a wooden board from the sill. Beneath it, parchment is nailed to the frame, faded ink, uneven script sealed with wax. A notice, possibly a summons, possibly a warning. Taverns often served as unofficial bulletin boards, messages passed by word of mouth or written with charcoal or tacked up in a place like this. Wanted posters, announcements, names, sometimes false, sometimes fatal. He covers the parchment again. At the counter, someone places a heavy pouch of coins down deliberately. The sound is soft, but it lands like a bell. A woman beside him glances at the pouch, then looks away. You don't see who collects it. A young man with a narrow face and thin hands approaches the counter. He has no cloak. His tunic is simple clean. He carries a folded scrap of parchment. He whispers something to the tavern keeper, who frowns, then nods. The young man places the parchment under a stone beside the ale barrel. No one touches it. You suspect it's a message, a paid delivery, or a coded sign. Historians still argue whether taverns were informal post offices or merely coincidental meeting points. Some towns had designated message keepers. Others left scraps in agreed-upon places beneath stones and cracks under mugs. A fringe note in a 1372 town ledger from Lincoln mentions the inn wall where the thieves leave their mark. No location, no explanation. Someone near you laughs, breaking your thought. It's the shaved-headed man. He slaps the table once, not in anger amusement. The woman beside him grins. He leans close, speaks a phrase in Old English. Something about king's coin and honest thieves. She nods. You realize gossip is the main currency here. Everyone listens. Few speak. The girl returns. Her tray holds 3 more mugs of ale. She weaves between tables, moving quickly. She glances once at you. Briefly. No expression. You hear the scrape of chairs behind you. The dice players are done. 2 rise. The third counts his winnings and hums a broken tune. He lifts one of the coins and bites it, then drops it into his purse. The sound is dry, hollow. Coins are never just coins. They're clues to region, to power, to faith. A florin might suggest foreign travel. A groat implies service to the crown. A bent coin might signal a cheat or a warning. You notice the man who carved into the table earlier is now asleep. Head down, knife sheathed. He snores faintly. The dog shifts again, stands, circles twice, lies down with a grunt. You take in the quiet movements around the room. A man enters from outside. He leaves the door slightly ajar. Rain hisses softly beyond. He carries a small bundle in one hand wrapped in oiled cloth. He walks past the tavern keeper, offers no explanation. He walks to a shadowy booth and sits. 2 minutes later, a second man joins him. They exchange nothing. Just sit. You look away again. The tavern holds secrets. It always has. Information trades hands faster than coins. One glance, one word, enough to alter lives. End them, too. The tavern keeper returns to his post behind the counter. He leans forward, resting on his elbows. His fingers are stained, possibly ink, possibly blood. No one approaches him now. You scan the wall again. More scratches there. Some shaped like arrows. Others like numbers. A map. A warning. You can't tell. The candle nearest you burns lower. Its puddle of tallow darkens the table. You move your cup to avoid the drip. Outside, the rain picks up. You hear it tapping against the shutters. Inside, everything continues. A low murmur of words, the roll of dice, the passing of mugs, and silence where it matters. You haven't stood in a while. Your legs ache. Knees stiffen from the cold, and the bench offers no comfort. You shift, then rise. No one stops you. You walk toward the far side of the room where a set of stairs hugs the wall. A crooked wooden rail leads upward. You hesitate at the bottom step. A glance toward the tavern keeper. He doesn't move, doesn't nod, but doesn't stop you. That's permission enough. The stairs creak under your weight. Loud, dry wood bending. The second step sinks slightly. You lean to the right to balance. At the top, a narrow hall stretches 10 feet, just 3 doors, each closed. The walls are timber and plaster cracked in places. A single candle burns at the far end on a wooden stool. Its wax pools over the edge. No holder, no plate, just hot wax on wood. The air is colder up here. Less smoke, but more draft. You feel it through the seams in the wall. You press your ear to the first door. Snoring, deep, rattling, close to the floor. The second door, no sound. The third door, movement. A chair scraping. A cough. You step back. None of these rooms are private. Not really. You rent space, not solitude. If you pay more, you might get a cot to yourself. If not, you share a bed or a pallet on the floor. You try the second door. It opens slightly. Inside darkness, then shape. A cot in the corner made of rope and straw. A rough wool blanket. No pillow. A chamber pot beside it. The floor is wood uneven with gaps between the planks. Cold air seeps up. You step inside. There's no lock. The door shuts quietly behind you. You sit on the edge of the cot. It sinks. It smells of sweat and damp linen. Not terrible, not good, just used. You run a hand over the blanket. Coarse. It scratches your skin. You don't want to lie down yet. You hear someone cough through the wall. Then a whisper. Then silence. In medieval inns and taverns, sleeping arrangements were functional. Clean bedding was rare. Beds were shared by strangers. Privacy was unknown. You remove your boots. Slowly. Your toes feel stiff. You curl them, then stretch them against the blanket. You lie back. The rope cot shifts beneath you. The frame creaks. Above you, the ceiling is low. Just overhead, a timber beam crosses the room. A dried herb bunch hangs from it. Possibly rosemary. Possibly mold. You stare at the ceiling. You feel the cot settle under your weight. You close your eyes. You open them again. Sleep won't come yet. Your back itches. Possibly fleas. The blanket is heavy enough, but it doesn't smell fresh. Historians still argue whether bedding in taverns was regularly changed. Records describe unwashed mats, shared pallets, and fines issued for lice infestations. But some establishments were cleaner, especially those near cities or with noble patrons. A fringe complaint from a 1391 court record tells of a noble's son who awoke scratched and swollen by mouse-bitten linen. The innkeeper was fined 1 shilling. The boy got clean sheets. You are not that boy. You turn onto your side. The cot groans. Your elbow touches the cold wall. You pull the blanket tighter. Your face is partly buried in its folds. You hear footsteps outside your door. Then stairs creak. Then the door below opens softly and closes again. Someone's left or arrived. You shift again. The straw beneath you crunches. There's no mattress. Just sackcloth stuffed with straw. The longer you lie still, the flatter it gets. The chamber pot smells faintly of old urine. You don't want to use it. You think of the floor instead. But you remember, the tavern dog sleeps somewhere under the stairs. You stay in place. Your stomach rumbles. The ale still swirls. You're not drunk, just slow, heavy. You breathe through your mouth, less scent, less distraction. You remember the downstairs corner, the bench you claimed? Still sticky. You remember the girl with the tray, the man with the ink-stained hands, the dog with one milky eye. They're all still down there, or asleep now, or watching. You close your eyes again. It's quiet. Almost. A board creaks in the room next door. A cough, a whisper, a word you don't understand. Then silence. You try not to scratch. You lie on your back still as possible, the blanket tight across your chest. Your body is tired, but your mind drifts. Sleep doesn't come easily in a place like this. The sounds of the tavern below have thinned out. Only the occasional footstep or chair scrape echoes upward through the floorboards. A gust of wind rattles the window shutter, then silence again. Your thoughts wander to what might happen if trouble breaks out downstairs. You've heard the stories. Drunken arguments over dice. Accidental elbows turned to drawn blades. Accusations of cheating, of stealing, of debts unpaid. You sit up slightly. Your hand rests near your boot. Your knife is still there, sheathed, dull, but better than nothing. Tavern brawls were as common as the drink itself. Town records list them like whether a scuffle on Monday, a stabbing on Thursday, a corpse on Sunday. Some ended quickly. Others required a cart and a priest. Downstairs the murmur rises again. Someone has returned. You hear the door thump shut, then voices too low to make out. You shift to the edge of the cot and pull on your boots. The laces are damp from earlier. Your fingers work slowly. Your shoulders ache from the tension. You descend the stairs again, each step creaking beneath your weight. The tavern's glow is softer now. Most candles have burned low. The hearth is more ash than flame. Smoke coils upward in slow spirals. The dog still lies near the warmth, unmoving. There are fewer patrons. 4, maybe 5. One slumped over a table. 2 speaking near the far wall. Another at the counter head, bowed hands wrapped around a mug. You glance at the tavern keeper. He's cleaning a wooden paddle with a rag. The motion is slow, rhythmic. He doesn't look up. The girl is nowhere in sight. You find your bench again, still sticky, still yours. You sit and wait. The man at the counter stands suddenly. His stool falls backward. No one reacts. He doesn't pick it up. He turns, steps unevenly toward the hearth, then stops. He reaches into his cloak. You feel your breath pause. He draws a knife. The room tenses, but then he crouches. He uses the blade to slice a piece of cheese from a block near the fire. He eats it, stands again, staggers back toward the counter. No words, no blood. Everyone relaxes. For now. Weapons in taverns were common, but restricted. In 1326, Edward II issued orders banning the bearing of arms within alehouses and the king's roads. The definition of arms varied. Swords, certainly. Crossbows, definitely. But knives, every man had one. For food, for rope, for threat. Historians still argue whether taverns enforced these bans or simply ignored them until blood was drawn. Some towns had constables who patrolled known taverns. Others relied on the barkeepers themselves to intervene. Most did nothing. A fringe record from Bristol in 1351 mentions an alehouse that employed its own peaceman, a veteran paid in ale and bread to remove troublemakers. He died in the job. Twice. You glance again at your boot. Your knife is still tucked inside. The fire pops. Another log falls. You stand slowly and walk toward the hearth. You don't sit. You simply hold out your hands toward the coals. They're still warm. Barely. You see a dark shape hanging above the mantel, something charred. Possibly a pot. Possibly an animal part. Possibly both. You step back. Your eyes adjust further now. The man with the ink-stained hands still sits at the same table. He's writing again. A scrap of parchment before him. His pen is crude, more twig than quill. He dips it into a small pot and scratches carefully. He's not drinking, not talking, just writing. Letters, orders, confessions. You look away. You notice something else on the wall behind the counter. A board, covered in marks, not decorative. Scores. Lines carved for each night. Possibly drink tallies. Possibly debts. One name appears more than once. will. Then again, will owes, and below that, no more. The last is carved deeper. You return to your bench. Sit. Watch the door. Someone might enter. Someone might not. Your hand rests on the table, near the knife, just in case. You sit quietly. The warmth from the hearth barely reaches you now. The candle nearest your bench has burned down to a stub, its tallow spilling onto the wood. The shadows grow longer. Every sound is clearer, sharper. You shift your weight. Your bladder aches. You need to relieve yourself. But where? You scan the tavern. There's no visible door marked with symbols or signs, no back hallway with tile or stone, no chamber labeled for the purpose, because there aren't any. Not here. Not in most places like this. You rise slowly. A man near the door snores, head tilted awkwardly against a support post. His hat has slipped over one eye. You pass him and approach the tavern keeper. You clear your throat softly. He doesn't look up. You ask. Quietly. He jerks his thumb toward the rear door, the one half concealed behind a draped sack of barley. No words, just the gesture. You nod. You head for it. The door sticks slightly when you push. The latch squeals. You step out into the night. The air is cold, damp. It hits your face like a bucket of water. Your nose runs instantly. There is no moon tonight, just mist and silence. You blink, adjusting to the dark. Behind the tavern, a narrow yard stretches 15 feet. Packed dirt, a few patches of wet straw. Against the far wall sits a wooden shack. Roof low, barely taller than you. The structure leans left. One wall is split near the base. You approach slowly. The ground is slick. As you near the door, the smell confirms it. The latrine. You open it. No latch. Just a wooden board that swings on iron nails. It creaks. Inside, the space is small. You step in sideways. One plank seat, no lid, just a hole. Beneath it, you don't want to look. You hear it more than see it. A bucket of ash sits to one side, for covering, not for cleaning. There is no water, no towel, no cloth. Just the wooden walls, the dark, and the smell of centuries. You relieve yourself quickly. The wind howls through the crack in the door. You step out again. You don't close the door. Back in the yard, you pause. You look up. No stars. The mist curls across your boots. You return the way you came, stepping carefully over puddles. Your heel sinks slightly in one soft patch. You wipe it on a tuft of grass. Back inside, the warmth hits again. You're grateful. Briefly, you shut the rear door. The latch thunks. The tavern keeper doesn't glance up. You return to your bench. Sit again. You press your fingers together out of habit. They still smell faintly of ash. In medieval taverns, sanitation was minimal. Chamber pots were common in sleeping rooms. Latrines, if they existed, were outside, shared unlit, often just a plank over a pit. Some towns required taverns to maintain a house of ease within 20 feet of the building. Most didn't. Historians still argue whether these regulations were enforced or ignored. In London, fines were issued for night water in alleys. In York, taverns paid extra to have waste removed monthly. But most country inns simply let it pile up. A fringe ordinance from a 14th century French village required taverns to post signs reminding guests to cover what they leave. It's unclear if anyone obeyed. You settle back into your seat. The man near the door wakes briefly, looks around, then closes his eyes again. The dog hasn't moved. You notice the girl again. She enters from the side carrying a mop. She moves toward a dark stain near the counter. She doesn't mop it, just spreads it thinner. Then she vanishes again. A breeze rattles the shutter. Your hands are cold. You rub them against your cloak. The tavern keeper reaches into a cupboard, pulls out a small jar. He unscrews the lid, lifts a pinch of powder, sprinkles it into a cup, fills it with warm ale from the pot above the fire. He drinks. You don't ask what it was. He doesn't offer. You let your head fall back, just a little. Your shoulders loosen. You feel the ache behind your eyes now. Not pain, just weight. The fire crackles again. One more log. You rest your head against the wall. It's cool, and somehow cleaner than the bench. You breathe in slowly, and try not to smell. You blink slowly, adjusting your eyes to the glow from the hearth. The tavern remains quiet, only the occasional cough, the murmur of two men near the back, and the low groan of someone turning in their sleep. You sit still on your bench, fingers curled around your own elbows, pulling your cloak tighter. But something new draws your attention. A dull clanging, metal on stone. You turn toward the sound. The door to the kitchen swings open and a cloud of smoke rushes into the room. Thick, gray, greasy. It carries the smell of charred onions, old pork fat, and something acrid you can't place. A woman emerges, face streaked with soot. She coughs once, pulls her apron over her mouth, then fans the air behind her with a wooden paddle. She leaves the door ajar. Smoke continues to billow into the main room. The tavern keeper looks up briefly, says nothing. No one moves to close the door. The kitchen is not a room, it's a hearth. A fire blackened with years of soot. Stone walls slick with grease. The air so thick you can feel it cling to your skin. You glance inside from your seat. You see a low ceiling lined with darkened beams, some charred at the edges. Pans hang from nails driven into the wood. Iron. Copper. all stained, dented, warped from years of heat. One pan still smokes gently. A slab of wood serves as the counter, stained 100 shades of brown and black, carved deep from repeated chopping. A cleaver rests on it, blade upright, handle dark with age. To the left, a cauldron swings on a hook above the fire. The liquid inside bubbles thickly, the surface glazed with a layer of fat. Bits of cabbage drift just beneath. A ladle blackened at the tip leans against the rim. Above the hearth, a wooden pole stretches wall to wall. Strips of meat hang from it, some fresh, some dry, all oily. A bucket of lard sits beneath the table. A knife stands upright in the fat. Flies hover nearby. The woman wipes her forehead with her sleeve. Her apron is smeared with soot and flour. She moves with practiced speed, no wasted motion. She grabs a loaf from a low shelf, breaks it in half, tosses it onto a plate. She adds a smear of something from a small crock. Maybe soft cheese. Maybe dried fish paste. She leaves the plate on a stool near the fire and returns to the bubbling pot. There's no chimney, just a gap in the roof above the hearth. Smoke rises, but not quickly. Most of it lingers trapped among the beams. The ceiling drips with black resin from decades of cooking. You hear a hiss. She's poured water into the pan. Steam explodes outward. It fills the space instantly, and for a moment, the entire kitchen disappears behind a veil of fog. You blink. The smell hits next sharp acidic. It singes your nose hairs. Someone coughs again, loudly. Tavern kitchens were not separate rooms. They were part of the structure, an alcove or a rear corner. Fires burned constantly, even in summer. Bread was baked in clay domes or on flat stones. Meat was hung, boiled, fried, or stewed until soft. Not for flavor, for safety. Historians still argue whether cooks in taverns received any formal training or were simply pressed into service by family necessity. Some accounts praise skilled hands. Others list complaints of grit in porridge and fingers lost to boiling pots. A fringe mention from a 15th century recipe scroll refers to kitchen hands with no knuckles, implying years of burns or injury. No names, just a line in the margin. The woman retrieves a pan from the embers using a cloth wrapped around her hand. The cloth smokes. She doesn't flinch. She dumps its contents into a basin. Bits of potato onion rind and liquid. No spices. Just heat and texture. Another figure enters the kitchen, possibly the daughter. She carries a bucket of wood. She drops it with a thud beside the hearth. The woman barks something. The girl nods. Leaves. They work in rhythm without words. You realize this kitchen is efficient but brutal. Everything is burned, battered, blackened, or boiling. The only color comes from vegetables, faint greens, dull reds, beige. There is no silverware, no porcelain, no glass. Everything is wood, iron, clay, or leather. The floor is packed earth covered in a mat of crushed bones, ash, and flour. The smoke doesn't clear. Your eyes sting. You turn away. Back to the bench. You rub your face. Your hands now smell like fire and grease. You hear the pot bubble again. No one has cleaned it. It's the same stew from earlier. The smoke from the kitchen still lingers. It clings to the rafters, moves slowly toward the hearth, and mixes with the heat already hovering there. You can see it swirl in the glow of the dying fire, curling like pale fingers through the air. You shift on the bench, stiff now from sitting so long, and rest your back against the rough wall. Something jabs your spine through the wood, likely a knot or an old nail. You ignore it. The main room is quieter than before. Then, without warning, a sharp whistle cuts through the stillness. You look toward the door. It opens halfway. A figure steps inside. Not a traveler. Not a soldier. A man in a tunic the color of dust, a pipe in his mouth and a sack slung over one shoulder. He says nothing. He nods to the tavern keeper, who nods back. Then he walks toward the hearth. From the sack he pulls a bundle of sticks. Not firewood pipes, flutes, a stringed instrument that looks like a small harp, but has only 5 strings. He places them near his feet, selects one, and begins to tune. One pluck, then another. The crowd stirs. People glance up. Someone near the wall straightens. A man previously asleep raises his head. The dog opens one eye. No one claps. No one speaks. The player begins. The music is slow, minor key, wandering. A simple tune. He plays without flourishes. His fingers are rough. The notes are not clean, but they carry through the room with a surprising strength. The melody repeats, then shifts, then repeats again. You exhale slowly. The tavern doesn't change. It just listens. Tavern entertainment varied. Musicians were hired sometimes. Other times they played for food or a place to sleep. Some traveled alone. Others in groups, pipe and drum, harp and voice. Some told stories. Some danced. Some brought trained animals. You once saw a man balance a cup on the nose of a dog. Tonight it's music. The song changes, still minor, still slow. The rhythm is steady. You feel it in your jaw, your chest, your boots. The door opens again. A boy walks in carrying a crate. Inside, wooden puppets. He walks near the musician, sets the crate down, pulls out a figure on strings, a soldier in red. He holds it up, nods. The musician doesn't stop. The boy begins. The puppet jerks to life. A simple story, a fight, a fall, a bow. No words, just motion. The crowd doesn't laugh, but they watch. Two women whisper and smile. A man claps once, quietly. The puppet collapses. The boy bows. He replaces the figure, pulls out another, a woman with painted lips. He lifts it. It dances. The dog growls once low, then stops. Someone near the door tosses a copper coin into the crate. The boy nods again. This is how he earns his supper. You remember taverns were theaters, not of drama, but of distraction. People needed relief from labor-cold loss. Music, puppets, laughter, all soft enough to pass under the law. Historians still argue whether such entertainers were respected artists or tolerated beggars. Some were licensed. Others were whipped. Many disappeared. A fringe record from a Welsh port town mentions a man who trained a goose to bow at the word bishop. He was banned from 5 taverns in 2 nights. The boy finishes his last puppet, a monk with a stick. He makes it stumble, bow, then leap. People chuckle. The music shifts again, louder, a rhythm now. The boy packs up. The man continues to play. Someone taps their cup on the table. A beat. Then another joins. A foot stomps. A hand slaps a thigh. The rhythm builds, then dies, just as fast. The musician stops. He lowers his instrument, wipes it with his sleeve. No bow, no request. He steps back. The tavern exhales. You realize the dog has moved closer to the fire. The girl reappears with 2 mugs. She places one near the musician. He nods once, drinks. The boy sits beside the crate. He eats something from a cloth pouch. Bread, possibly cheese. No one speaks. Entertainment ends that way. Not applause, just silence. Then soup. You lean back. You didn't expect music tonight. You didn't expect to feel anything. But you did. Briefly. And now it's gone. You lean forward, elbows on the table, head low. The warmth from the fire has faded to a faint hum against your back. The last of the flames dance lazily among the coals, casting long shadows that reach across the floor like silent fingers. The tavern is no longer full. The dice players are gone. The ink-stained man has disappeared. The puppet boy has curled up beside his crate, using it as a pillow. Even the musician has dozed off, his instrument propped against the wall untouched. You look toward the door. It creaks open. A gust of wind drags in the scent of wet earth and dung. Then slowly a pair of shapes emerge from the fog outside. 2 figures. Thick cloaks. Mud-caked boots. Wide hats pulled low. They speak softly to each other, then step inside. The tavern keeper looks up, nods, once gestures toward the hearth. The 2 men move there and settle onto the bench you saw earlier. Neither removes their cloak. One draws out a small pouch, the sound of coins muffled by cloth. The girl appears, takes the pouch, disappears. The men say nothing. They wait. The tavern changes again. You feel it. The night crowd has left or passed out. This is the morning crowd, early traders, farmers, men who walk before sunrise. They come not for company, but for warmth and ale. You smell damp wool, animal fat, wet leather. You hear sniffing, a cough, boots shifting. They don't look at you. You don't look at them. A third man enters. He carries a wicker basket, covered with cloth. He places it on a table near the door, uncovers it. Inside eggs, rough bread, a flask. He begins to eat. No plate, no tools, just hands. This is how morning begins. Not with song, not with prayer, but with chewing and steam. A woman enters next. She's older, her back curved, her hands red from cold. She carries nothing. She walks directly to the fire, lowers herself, and places her feet on the hearthstone. She pulls her shawl around her neck and stares into the ash. She does not order food. She does not drink. She just sits. Taverns served as gathering spots for travelers, but also for locals, before fields, before trade, before the carts were hitched. People came here for news, for shelter, for the small miracle of heat. Historians still argue whether taverns doubled as unofficial town halls or remained strictly for profit. Some hosted market meetings. Others kept lists of births and deaths. Some were avoided entirely by the respectable. A fringe tale from a 14th century Norwich parish refers to a tavern known as the Cold Foot, where debts were traded in whispers before sunrise. You watch the girl return. She carries a bowl of gruel, no garnish. She places it in front of one of the new men. He eats without looking up. The fire crackles once. You rise. Your legs ache again, but less than before. You step slowly toward the hearth. The older woman shifts her shawl slightly. You nod to her. She doesn't respond. You lower yourself to the stone. The warmth barely reaches, but it's enough. The dog has moved again, now near the stairs, curled tight. One eye open, still watching. The tavern keeper begins stacking cups behind the counter. Some metal, some wood. All dented, all stained. The floor crunches under his boots. Straw, ash, old bread crusts. The smell of cabbage has returned. Faint, but rising. Someone has restarted the pot. Another day has begun, quietly, without announcement, without fanfare, just footsteps, and chewing, and waiting. You remain near the hearth arms, folded shoulders hunched slightly against the persistent chill that lingers even this close to the coals. The others don't speak. They sit, eat, or warm their hands in silence. A rooster crows outside. You hear it faintly through the wall. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the tavern has already shifted into a new rhythm, slower, steadier, somehow heavier. It's no longer about sleep or drink. It's about waiting, preparing, starting again. You watch as the tavern keeper moves to the window. He lifts the wooden latch and opens the shutter just enough to peer outside. Pale gray light seeps in, soft, colorless. Dawn barely formed. He nods to himself, then closes it again. You hear the latch click. You turn toward the opposite wall near the entry. A small board has been nailed there, its surface covered in bits of parchment and wax. You rise slowly and walk to it. Up close, the board tells its own story. A worn strip of calfskin with faded ink, an old tax notice. Still posted, still ignored. A square of linen pinned to the wood with a nail. Scrawled on it, a name. Nothing else. Torn at the corner. A piece of slate with chalk markings, likely drink tallies. Some erased. Some overwritten. At the bottom, a folded paper sealed with yellow wax. Intact. Fresh. You don't touch it. The wall carries messages both old and new. In medieval taverns, especially those in larger towns or near market roads, these boards served as informal communication hubs. Notices of debt, warnings about thieves, schedules for traveling merchants, even church mandates. Some patrons couldn't read, but they'd memorize the shape of a message, or pay a penny for someone to read it aloud. Historians still argue whether these public postings were authorized by towns or simply tolerated. Some suggest taverns offered better information networks than churches. Others dismiss them as rumor boards. A fringe example from Exeter mentions a tavern wall where farmers left symbols: one cross for lost sheep, two circles for an open field, a dagger for danger on the road. Only locals understood them. You step back from the board. The tavern keeper notices you looking, says nothing. Behind you, someone clears their throat. You return to your bench. The fire has settled into a steady burn now. A few more sticks added. It flickers gently, casting a warm light across the floor. The girl reappears with a broom. Rough bristles bound to a stick. She begins sweeping. Not thoroughly, just a few strokes, enough to scatter the worst of the crumbs, bones, and rushes. She works quickly, her eyes on the floor. You watch the motion. It's not cleaning, it's rearranging. She sweeps straw from one place to another, revealing patches of dark stone beneath. Then she stops. She leans the broom against the wall and disappears into the kitchen. The room smells of cooked barley now, possibly oats. Someone near the door sneezes. The woman by the hearth rises slowly, folds her shawl, and walks out into the morning. No words, no coin. She leaves the bench warmer than she found it. Another man enters. He carries a scale. Brass arms, wooden base, leather case. He sets it on a table near the door. He begins to unpack. This is how trade begins. No shouting, no stalls. Just one man, one scale, one seat. He places small weights on the table. Waits. Soon someone else enters, a sack in hand. Apples, maybe. They sit. They barter. No one watches. The tavern becomes a market, one transaction at a time. You hear the soft clink of coins, the rustle of cloth. No tally is kept. It's trust or habit. You glance again at the board. The sealed parchment remains untouched. Likely not for you. Likely not for anyone who asks. A private message left in a public place. The girl returns, this time with a cloth wiping tables. She moves yours last. You lift your cup. She wipes, then moves on. You set it down again, still sticky, still yours. The tavern keeper lights a new candle, places it near the hearth. It flickers once, then holds. Another day, another list of names, another stew. You sip the last of the ale that's turned lukewarm. It settles in your stomach like damp bread. The light from the fresh candle flickers on the wooden walls, revealing more than you'd noticed before. Scratches, names, symbols, layers of markings that form a chaotic history carved by knives and chalk. Your gaze returns to the message board. A new hand now reaches toward it. The man with the scale rises from his seat and adds a folded scrap to the edge. He pins it with the same nail that held the strip of linen. No one asks what it is. No one looks at it closely. You hear someone behind you mutter a name. You don't turn around. The tavern continues. You realize now that the tavern is more than just a place to eat and drink. It's a network, a living node in a web of people and places that span beyond this village, beyond this moment. People leave messages. People leave warnings. Sometimes they don't come back. The door opens again. Another traveler enters. His cloak is torn. He limps. His hands shake as he approaches the counter. The tavern keeper does not greet him. He simply pours a mug of ale and sets it down. No coin is offered. Not yet. The man drinks. Then he takes a breath, reaches into his tunic, pulls out a folded letter sealed with black wax. He lays it gently on the board, then turns and walks to the fire. The seal is unfamiliar, a symbol pressed deep into wax. A circle, two lines crossing. A mark not found on any other message here. No one touches it. The tavern keeper glances at it, then back to his mug. Taverns served as unofficial post stations long before any king issued a charter. Carried by word of mouth or parchment or wax-marked scrolls, information passed through these rooms like wind through cracks. Some true, some false, all dangerous. Historians still argue whether these tavern messages influenced policy or merely seeded panic. One suggests a letter pinned to a door in Oxford warned of plague before the official decree arrived. Another says rebels communicated uprisings through alehouse walls. A fringe detail from a Cornish ledger in 1409 tells of a sealed message left at a tavern outside Launceston. It warned of poisoned wells. Whether true or false, it sparked a riot. The man with the limp says nothing. He holds the mug in both hands. His eyes do not move from the fire. You glance again at the board. The messages pile on one another. Names half erased. Signs drawn over others. A palimpsest of threats favors debts and hopes. There are no dates, only names, and some are crossed out. You stand slowly and step closer. One parchment reads, "Gone to York. Return midsummer. Leave coin with Mira." Another, "If William arrives, tell him I did not wait." Another scrawled in thick black ink, "Do not trust the red wagon." You don't know what it means, but someone does. You let your fingers hover near one message. The parchment curls at the edges. Damp. Faded. It reads, "Stop asking. He's buried." You lower your hand. You step back. Messages here are not for conversation. They are signals. You hear a stool scrape. A young woman approaches the board. She pulls a message from beneath the others, reads it, frowns, tears it in half, drops it in the ash bucket. She leaves the tavern. The parchment burns slowly. You watch the curl of blackened edges until it disappears. The man with the scale stands again, packs his weights, closes the case. He does not glance at the messages. The tavern keeper speaks to him low and flat. A few words, a nod. Then the man leaves. A merchant, a courier. You don't ask. Your cup is empty now, but you don't rise. You look at the board one last time, then lower your eyes. The candle flickers again. A new name appears. Carved, fresh, still wet. The tavern air has shifted again, not just in temperature, but in mood. People speak less now. Movement has slowed. The weight of the early morning has replaced the loose energy of night. You feel the heaviness in your shoulders. Your boots still carry mud from yesterday. Your cloak smells faintly of smoke and sweat. You haven't washed your hands in hours, and you don't expect to anytime soon. You sense something behind you. A hush. Then a door opens. Not the main entrance. The rear one. The same one that led you to the latrine earlier. Now two men step inside from that direction. They are not wet. They have not just arrived. Their cloaks are clean. Their boots dry. They have been standing outside, waiting. Each wears a short coat lined with dark fur. Both carry short staffs, wood wrapped in iron at the tip. Inspectors. You've heard of them. Tavern inspectors came rarely, usually when ordered, sometimes for bribes, sometimes for taxes, sometimes just to make a show. They stop near the door. One speaks to the tavern keeper. His voice is firm but not loud. 3 fines unpaid. The tavern keeper doesn't respond. The inspector lifts a scrap of parchment, reads aloud, "Unsealed ale barrel. Overcrowding. Unapproved bedding." He lowers the parchment, then waits. The tavern keeper doesn't argue. He reaches below the counter and pulls out a pouch, places it on the counter, tied shut. The inspector doesn't open it. He nods, then walks into the room. The second man follows. They don't smile. They don't greet anyone. They begin inspecting. First, the floor. One kneels and lifts a handful of rushes. He sniffs them, drops them, stands. Next, the benches. He presses his hand against the edge, looks for mold splinters, cracks. He taps the wall twice, then moves on. The second man approaches the hearth. The dog lifts its head, then lowers it again. The inspector kneels, lifts the pot lid, sniffs, winces, replaces it. He stands. He makes a mark on a tablet of wax. They continue to the rear kitchen. The door swings open. Steam hisses. You hear muffled conversation, then a cough, then silence. They remain inside a while. No one speaks in the main room. Everyone watches. Everyone pretends not to watch. When they return, they hold a small object, a cracked ladle. One lifts it toward the tavern keeper. He shrugs. The inspector drops it into a cloth bag. Evidence. Fines will follow. They return to the counter. The first one opens the pouch, counts silently, then ties it shut again and drops it into a leather satchel beneath his cloak. No receipt, no record. They leave. No goodbye. No threat. Just the scrape of boots on stone, and the door closing. Historians still argue whether these inspectors were part of a centralized system or freelance agents under no true authority. Some were legitimate tax collectors. Others were hired muscle for a lord or guild. A fringe account from Durham in 1417 describes 2 false brothers in matching coats who fined 3 taverns, then vanished. The fines were never acknowledged by the town. The brothers were never found. You sit back. You exhale. The tavern keeper returns to his post. He wipes the counter slowly, then pours himself a mug of ale. He drinks it all in one motion, then places the mug back down. He speaks for the first time in hours. "One more winter," he mutters. No one answers. The girl enters with a basket. She begins sweeping again. Quieter now, more carefully. You notice the dog has moved to the stairs, as if seeking distance. You notice a new message has appeared on the wall. Just chalk this time. A circle with a line through it. No signature. You don't ask. You don't need to. You've seen enough. The tavern survives another inspection. Barely. The ladle will be replaced. The rushes will not. You sip from your empty mug out of habit and wonder what tomorrow's fine will be for. The chalk mark remains on the wall, white against the dark timber just above eye level. A circle split by a single line, a symbol you don't recognize but clearly placed with intention. It draws the eye and holds it. No one else seems to notice, or they pretend not to. The tavern keeper doesn't erase it. You turn away from it. The hearth has burned low again. Only the dog remains close to it now, head resting on its paws, ears twitching faintly. The girl moves slowly now. She sets down the broom and disappears again behind the kitchen door. A knock sounds outside. It's not on the front door. It's on the wall. 3 firm raps, a pause, then 2 more. Everyone looks up. No one moves. Then the tavern keeper groans, steps from behind the counter, walks slowly to the front, and unlatches the door. It opens inward. A man stands there wrapped in a coarse brown cloak, a wooden cross tied around his neck with twine. A priest. He steps inside holding a small bundle under one arm and a long staff in his right hand. He does not smile. He does not remove his hood. The tavern keeper gestures toward a stool near the hearth. Not kindly, not rudely, just out of habit. The priest doesn't sit. He clears his throat once, then speaks. On this morning, he says slowly, "You have gathered once again in drink and gambling in darkness." No one responds. His voice is flat, tired, as though this isn't the first time, and likely not the last. The Lord sees all he says, shifting the bundle under his arm, even here among the straw and the spoons and the bones. He sets the bundle down, opens it. Inside small scrolls. Handwritten. Tiny crosses drawn on each. He takes one, lifts it, looks around, then sets it on the counter. "For your soul," he mutters. The tavern keeper doesn't touch it. The priest turns toward the rest of the room. "You played dice," he says. "You spill your seed. You pass messages of heresy. You lie beside each other like animals. You drink in the morning. You drink at night. You call it life." He pauses, then continues. "This is not bread. This is not body. This is not light." He walks slowly toward the hearth, stops near the dog. The dog does not move. You warm yourselves with sin. The man near the door coughs. The priest glances his way, then kneels. He lays one scroll at the edge of the hearth beneath a loose stone. He presses it there until the wax sticks, then stands. Taverns were often condemned by the church. They were seen as dens of vice places where the sacred rhythm of prayer and work broke down. Taverns allowed rest, escape, secrets, and laughter. Too much laughter. Historians still argue whether church opposition to taverns stemmed from moral concern or from economic rivalry. Monasteries ran their own inns, sold their own ale, controlled their own message boards. A fringe sermon fragment from a traveling friar in 1382 warned, "The tavern will be your grave and the spoon your shovel." You watch as the priest steps toward a sleeping man at the table. He lays a scroll on the man's chest. The man doesn't stir. The priest continues. You have forgotten the Sabbath. You glance at the window. The sky is slightly brighter now, the gray of full morning. You sell when you should pray. You feast when you should fast. He sets one scroll on the floor beneath a bench, another on the seat beside the girl's broom. Then slowly he returns to the counter. He removes a final scroll. He places it gently on the tavern keeper's side of the counter. You cannot pay for this, he says. He turns. He walks to the door. He doesn't bless the room. He doesn't close the door behind him. He leaves it open. The cold seeps in. The girl reappears and shuts it, hard. The tavern keeper doesn't touch the scrolls. No one does. You hear wind against the shutters. The fire pops once. The chalk symbol still gleams. You close your eyes and pretend not to remember any of it. The priest is gone. The scrolls remain. The one on the counter curls slightly at the edge. The wax dries in a pale ring beneath it. The ink is beginning to bleed. No one moves to claim it. No one moves to hide it. It simply stays where he left it. You watch the tavern keeper. He doesn't touch the scroll. Instead, he reaches for the jug, fills a cup, drinks. No words. The fire near the hearth has sunk into quiet ash, a few glowing threads visible in the gray. The room is brighter now, but only because the day outside has taken form. You see it through the cracks in the shutters, a steady light, cold and white, the kind that gives no warmth. The chalk mark still glows faintly on the wall. You wonder what it means, but you don't ask. The tavern is not the place for questions. You look around. The same man from earlier still sits near the back cup in hand, watching. The dog is asleep again, muzzle tucked beneath its front leg. The crate with the puppets remains by the wall untouched. The boy is gone. You hadn't seen him leave. The message board near the door has gained 2 new scraps. You didn't see those arrive either. Time here moves in layers. People arrive, leave, reappear. Nothing is announced. Nothing explained. You rise. You walk to the board once more. One parchment reads, "Travelers to the west, beware." The bridge at Downmoor is washed. Another miller's daughter missing. Last seen wearing red. You blink. Someone has crossed out the second line. Then written beneath it, "No longer missing." There's no signature. You step back. Another message scratched in charcoal directly onto the wall beside the board reads, "Only 4 passed. 1 returned." The tavern keeper sees you reading. He does not speak. You return to your bench. The girl sweeps the floor again, moving with mechanical precision. The straw is the same. She just shifts it around. You glance at the table. A dried smear of something. Possibly ale. Possibly blood. It doesn't matter. You place your fingers along the edge. The wood is warm now. Your own body heat trapped there. You look toward the kitchen. The woman inside lifts the lid from the large pot. Steam rises. She stirs slowly. The ladle is new, not the one the inspectors took. This one is smaller, possibly from her own supplies. She adds something to the pot, dried herbs from a pouch on her belt. The scent that drifts into the room is different, brighter, possibly mint, possibly wild garlic. Another bowl is set down near the hearth. Someone eats. Another enters. A man with a black cloth wrapped around his arm. He walks to the board. Posts nothing. Takes nothing. He sits. Says nothing. You stare at him for a moment too long. He notices. He does not smile. You look away. The tavern was never safe, just safer than outside. Taverns existed between rules, beyond patrols, beneath notice. Historians still argue whether they protected travelers or simply paused their suffering. Some describe taverns as havens, others as traps with ale. A fringe diary from a Flemish scribe in 1394 describes a tavern where silence was sold by the cup, and every man drank in fear of the next one's story. The candle near your bench burns low. The last of the wax curls downward in a slow trickle. The room feels smaller now, not because of size, because of memory. You know what was said here, what was left unsaid. You know who came and who didn't return. The girl leans her broom against the wall again. She moves behind the counter, takes a crust of bread from a small sack, eats in silence. The tavern keeper lifts his eyes once. They meet hers, then yours. No one speaks. You close your eyes. Just for a moment. Just to pretend you didn't see any of it. You open your eyes again. Slowly. The light outside has grown stronger now. Gray has turned to white. Not bright, but full. The shadows inside the tavern have shrunk, edged inward by the morning sun. You hear footsteps overhead. Someone rising. Someone packing. Someone preparing to leave. You remain still on your bench. Your legs have grown stiff. One arm has gone numb from where it pressed too long against the wall. You adjust slowly, quietly. You don't want attention. A man you hadn't noticed before is pulling on a pair of boots near the stairs. He winces slightly. A long journey ahead, or one just finished. He stands, loops a bag over his shoulder, walks toward the hearth. He warms his hands. Then he leaves. No words. The door creaks, closes. Wind presses against it once. Then silence. Another sound now. Soft, ragged. Someone snoring behind you. Under a table. One of the night's drinkers forgotten or ignored. A bowl lies tipped nearby, empty. The last of the stew dried to the edge. No one moves to wake him. You glance again at the hearth. It glows faintly. A log collapses in on itself, sending up a final puff of smoke. The tavern keeper rises. He walks over and adds 2 more pieces of wood. No rush, no extra effort. Just enough to keep the coals alive. The fire accepts them without protest. The girl appears again with a rag. She wipes one of the tables near the door. She stops when she finds something sticky. She works at it for several moments, then gives up. She moves on. Your eyes return to the message board. Another scroll has been added. You didn't see who placed it. You rise. Step toward it. The scroll is unsealed, the parchment torn unevenly, written in a heavy hand. Safe passage north, but not east. Do not take the valley. 2 gone. Beneath it, a second note. Confirm if bridge holds. 2 carts expected by Sunday. The board is now full. No space remains. Parchments layered. Chalk faded. Scraps curling at the corners. One pinned beneath another. Some stained with drink. One burned at the edge. The tavern keeper doesn't glance at them. They are not for him. They are for the wall, for memory, for anyone passing through. You sit again. The floor feels colder now. Your back aches. Your mind is slower. You've seen the night. You've seen the morning. You've heard the warnings. Smelled the stew. Watched the broom sweep circles that never finish. This is the tavern. You understand it now. You look at the girl. She ties back her hair, picks up the same broom, begins again. The same floor, the same rushes. No cleaner, just rearranged. Someone enters. A traveler, eyes wide from the road, hands raw from the cold. He steps in. The tavern keeper looks up, then down. He says nothing. The traveler approaches the bench nearest the hearth. He does not see you. He sits. He waits. The tavern continues. Nothing ends. Just one cup at a time, one bowl, one breath, and one name scratched onto the wall behind the shutter. No one reads it, but it stays, just like you. The fire has dimmed. The shutters rattle faintly now in the morning wind. Somewhere far down the road, a cart creaks into motion. Its wheels thump softly on the frozen earth. The fields wait beyond the mist, still damp, still brown. You remain where you are. The bench beneath you hard and familiar. The scent of smoke and old straw clings to your cloak. You feel the weight of your limbs still quiet, softened by the heaviness of a full night inside these walls. The dog has stopped moving. The broom has stopped sweeping. Even the girl has disappeared into the back room again, perhaps for bread or water, or just a breath of air. There are no songs now, no games, no speeches. Just the faint crackle of wood, the hush of settling dust, the faint echo of the priest's voice lingering in your ear long after he's left. The scrolls remain. The marks on the wall remain. The chalk, the wax, the scraps of names and warnings, they will stay longer than any of the men who wrote them. You close your eyes again, and you let the world fall away. You feel the stillness. You welcome it. The sound of the spoon in the pot no longer rings in your ear. The coughs, the footsteps, the clatter of coins, they've faded. There is only the breath in your chest, the weight of the wood beneath you, the dim flicker behind your eyelids. No more movement, no more noise, just one breath after another, soft, even, gone.